Start recording.
Welcome to
Okay.
my world.
Let us begin. Welcome everyone to the gathering at Northern Hills. We are a progressive community that believes everyone is important and everyone matters, and no matter where they are on this journey to their own spirituality and their own faith. So we welcome you all who are here this morning, and we welcome everyone. I have a couple of housekeeping things. One is the restrooms are out the door and to your left or right, however it is at your house. Second, when we come to the joys and sorrows and to the discussion during our service, please find the mute or unmute button on your own screen. On my iPad, it's at the top. On a desktop, it's at the bottom of the screen. And if you wish to speak at that time and not use the chat function, then please be aware of where that button is so that you can unmute yourself. It just saves a little confusion, especially if we have to search for people. So little housekeeping there. And now I would like to highlight just a few announcements. You received the announcements from Doug this week, and for this month, that is the news of what's happening at GNH. Adrian is out probably until the end of the month, and we are going to include all the announcements and all the news in your Sunday announcements, which will arrive usually on Thursday afternoon. So please read through those. That's your news, and read them well. And if you do have questions, please contact someone who's either highlighted in an article or contact a board member, and we'll try and get you the facts, not the fake news. There is no fake news in here, by the way. Let's see. So a couple of announcements to highlight. For one, every year the Valley Interfaith usually asks us to provide certain school supplies. And this year, as in the past years, they have asked us to donate folders. These are 2-pocket, 3-prong folders, and they need 115. We have quite a few left over from last year, which is good. But they are asking us to provide 115 folders. And if you can provide any of those, please use your code to the church and bring them in and just set them on the nearest bench. And we would really appreciate it. The deadline for this is September 9th, which is rushing up on us. This helps all the kids in need, whether they are actually in school or they are virtually learning. And I have learned that in most schools where schools are happening in person, kids are not allowed to share any of their supplies this year. That's a safety measure. So these kids really need to have their own supplies, and we're asked to give actually very little. So these items are on sale at various places. So please help out with that effort. Let's see. Our The Vote team has met recently and planned its upcoming efforts to get out the vote. There are several different activities planned. And if you would like to join with this team, and it's not hard work, it's work you can do at home. And at least for me, it does not involve a telephone, which is good. But contact Jack Brennan, and he can set you on the right path to help us out with that. I have notes everywhere, so just a minute. As of September 1st, Reverend Doug will be back to a 2/3 time ministry. The minister transition team has met again this week and will meet again in 2 weeks. And right around September 1st, there will be a much more definitive list of what we as a congregation can do to keep things going, and what Doug will be doing, including office hours and such matters. So we have a very good team. And if you have questions, their names are in the announcements. And if you have questions, please contact them or contact a board member, and we will do our best to answer your questions. Let's see. I think that is the highlights that we have for our announcements this morning. Once again, you received on my printer 15 pages of announcements, so be sure and read through those, and there's lots of news there. So again, we say welcome, and we would like to begin our service by lighting the chalice, and we thank the people who have come together as a family or as a team and sent in a short video of them lighting their chalice at home, and maybe a few comments of why it's important to them. So if you would like to be part of the service in that way, please please do so. It's really wonderful to see other people's families and faces on our screen. So there are instructions there in your announcements. So please join us with that. And for now, then, we will light the chalice.
All right, I got my chalice lighting video today, guys. So I will show that to you. Where is it?
Thank you, Michael. That is that was really very beautiful, and seeing the 7 principles on the screen was just a continuing reminder of what we are about. So we thank you for that. And now Michael will play a prelude for us. This is actually a guided meditation moment, and it's a time to prepare our hearts and minds for the words we will hear this morning. And if you wish, you may drop a prayer stone or perform a ritual or gesture that is meaningful to you to indicate your participation or your particular prayer or need in this service.
So yeah, this is a guided meditation. This is a meditation that I do. It probably comes from other meditations I've done, but it's an open-mindedness meditation, which I've just kind of developed on my own, I guess. I don't know, but it helps me, and it helps me kind of change my inner monologue, which I think is really important, especially when we're talking about what we're talking about. because we get so centered on the same thought patterns. So if you'll indulge me, this is about a 6-minute meditation. It's guided. Just try and get comfortable, sit, and my voice will kind of guide you through it. So here we go. Find a comfortable position. Try to remove tension from your neck, shoulders, and arms. Let your hands fall to your lap or to your sides and close your eyes. Feel a warm wave of energy move from your head to your toes. Let it dissolve pain, contraction, and discomfort. Sink deeper into physical relaxation. Now feel your body expand and open. Being aware of any thoughts that come into your head without the intention of following them. Do not ignore or repress them. Just let them flow by without reacting to them. Maintain your awareness in your head cavity, experiencing space and emptiness there. Making an effort to relax even more now. Allowing your mind to remain open. Let thoughts and feelings flow by without emotional reaction. Recognizing the nature of thoughts and feelings simply as reflections of the past, a replaying of memories, interpretations of physical sensations and emotions, a desire to understand everything, an attempt to control every aspect of life, which does not allow for the flow of life to take place effortlessly, pleasantly, and joyfully. Create space in your mind now by letting these thoughts go. Focus instead on the emptiness in your mind, the openness and space. Notice when your mind is empty of thoughts, the body and head opens, and you have the ability to connect to the things around you. Your mind is remaining open and empty, experiencing experiencing expansion now in the area of your head. Visualize energy pouring into the crown of your head, opening it and expanding its walls. Experience this area of your body tingling and active as it develops more and more space and more clarity, developing an ability to see and experience things without interference from memories in your past. Simply seeing what is and nothing more. Allowing your mind to be open without forcing it. Openness and emptiness, not pushing thoughts away. Focus on the downpour of energy onto your crown, the creation of more and more space. Silence. No thoughts. Now gently wiggle your fingers and toes and open your eyes.
Thank you, Michael. Beautiful meditation. Thank you. Let us sing together the song "Make Channels for Streams of Love." It's number 299. If you have a hymnal with you, and Michael will lead us.
Make channels for the streams of love where they may broadly run, and love as overflowing streams to fill them everyone. But if at any time we see such channels to provide, of love for us will soon be parched and dried, for we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
Thank you. Let us recite together our unison affirmation. We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children. And now we will turn this over to Doug, who is giving his third message with the reading of Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. Today, it's about letting go of fragility. Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Michael, for your music so far this morning. As Sue said, this is part 3 of a 5-part series in which I call our congregation-wide book club on the Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility. And next Sunday, Michael Tacey will be speaking on the subject of millennial fragility. And that's a topic that is also addressed in the book, and I look forward to hearing what Michael has to say. And then in 2 weeks, we will do the service will entirely involve a discussion, mostly on the last chapter in the book. Where do we go from here? So with that, I begin today's message. And whenever I use stories from the Bible to make a point, I do so from the perspective that the story is not literal truth. Many Bible stories are not historical, but were intended to be a type of fable that teaches a lesson. And I use Bible stories in that regard. Now, all of us know the story of Moses and the ancient Jews receiving from God the 10 Commandments. And later in this story, the Jewish people grew tired of the 10 Commandment rules and decided to instead worship a gold calf, which was an idol that symbolized wealth and pleasure and a do-your-own-thing ethos. God was, of course, not pleased and punished the Jews by forbidding they enter the promised land of milk and honey, Israel, for 40 years. In that way, she fulfilled her indication that children will be punished for the sins of their parents. And while that seems unjust, it is fact that children often do suffer from the sins of their parents. And it's true for us today as we struggle with racism in our nation. As we know, slavery and racism are rightfully called the original sins of America. And in another Bible story that occurred centuries after Moses, Jesus encountered a man who had been blind from birth. The man lived near a healing pool of water, and bathing in it was set at the time to cure people of their afflictions. Jesus asked the blind man why he never got in the water to be healed. The man indicated that it was God's will he was blind. He held the common belief at the time that his disability was the result of his parents' sins. Jesus, however, told the man to immediately get up and get in the miracle water. And the man did so and was suddenly able to see. Now, one lesson from this story is that while children might suffer the sins of their parents, they must take responsibility to heal themselves. And I suggest there's a clear analogy from those Bible stories to what Robin DiAngelo teaches in her book, White Fragility. We are the unwilling and often unconscious heirs of 400 years of white supremacy sin. The racist sins of our ancestors have been visited upon us. But much like the blind man in the Jesus story, we must muster the courage to heal ourselves and thereby break the cycle of imposing racist sin on our own children and grandchildren. And just as Jesus implied to the blind man, DiAngelo tells us that while we may not see our racism, we are not bad people because we have it. The disease is, of course, bad. We as holders of it are not. The crucial admonishment to us, just as Jesus commanded the blind man, is that we cannot choose to rest idly when a cure is available. And I suggest that a serious consideration of the book, White Fragility, is one potential cure for us. And therein lies another important analogy between the Jesus story and what Robin DiAngelo writes about white fragility. Why was the blind man seemingly indifferent to his impairment and a possible cure? Had he grown comfortable with his condition? Was he unwilling to confront the idea of having an inherited disability due to past sin? having been blind from birth, did he not know the blessing of seeing? And with regard to the sin of racism, I apply all of those questions to us today. Of course, we can stretch analogies too far, but it is a known reality that people absorb and then believe what culture and traditions teach. Our culture, as D'Angelo explains in her book, says that a racist is an ignorant, closed-minded, and mean-intentioned person. Since we have equated being racist equals those qualities, and we tell ourselves we don't have those qualities, we therefore conclude we cannot be racist. And because of that, we go about our lives indifferent to the reality of our inherited implicit racism. The troubling thing, however, is that when people like Jesus tell us we are indeed inwardly racist, or that we have spoken or acted in a way that is racist, but that there are ways to be cured, we insist that those people are wrong, that we are not so infected, that they insult us by saying we are, and that only we know our truth. We close our minds to the advice of people who clearly see our sickness and out of love want us to be better. Of course, it often seems that people who want us to be cured of racism often don't seem very loving. In many ways, such people, who are often people of color, seem to us to be accusatory, and our feelings get hurt. We react defensively. We get offended, or we disengage and don't listen. As Robin DiAngelo says, our white fragility is suddenly very apparent. But as I elaborated last week, our fragility is because we've bought into the cultural idea that being called a racist means we are bad. And if someone tells us we are bad, they can't be motivated by love. If we change that false narrative to instead realize our inherited unconscious racism does not make us bad, we can then accept without feeling hurt the firm but verbally non-violent statements that we and all white people are indeed implicitly racist. We did not cause that. We inherited it. And taking up the analogy of our racism being a disease, we can further acknowledge how our disease hurts other people. Using the comparison I made last Sunday, that racism is a lot like the disease of addiction. Addicts, of course, deeply hurt those around them with all of the negative things they do. The lies, the stealing, the disruptive behavior, the hypocrisy. People who love an addict, however, often hold an intervention to confront him or her firmly and directly, but with love. They tell the addict of the hurt they've caused. And addicts, often in self-denial and defensiveness, can react defensively. I only drink socially. I can stop anytime. I don't do anything to hurt you. Because addiction and alcoholism are often perceived as bad. Nobody wants to admit they are one. But if an addict can see they are sick, not bad, and if their disease harms others as well as themselves, many are very willing to take the difficult look at themselves, see that they are addicts, admit that publicly, and then undertake the challenge to change. Ultimately, they're better people for their willingness to see truth about themselves. As I have reflected on what Robin DiAngelo says in her book, I realize there have been a few people in my past who have held interventions for me about my implicit racism. And sadly, I reacted with white fragility. I was hurt and inwardly defensive. What's worse is that I have sometimes made the intervention more about my hurt than about the hurt of the intervener. As DiAngelo points out in her book, my hurt feelings and that of many other white people can seem like someone who hits a pedestrian with their car, but then gets sympathy for their distraught feelings. The people who have truly been hurt are too often ignored. Robin DiAngelo tells what she has resolved to do when someone tells her how she has racially hurt them. She says thank you, and then asks what she should do or have done instead. In that way, her book, White Fragility, is an intervention for all of us. It's a challenging book, and any of our possible defensive reactions to it can underscore the very point that DiAngelo makes. We're too afraid, too proud, too comfortable, too blind, too fragile to see areas in us that are racist. That is due in part to our false belief that to be a racist is bad. I think it's also due to our pride that refuses to believe we are part of a vast system of white privilege that benefits us and hurts people of color. That's contrary to what any of us want to think about ourselves. I mentioned 2 weeks ago how Robin DiAngelo spoke to white Democratic members of Congress soon after the George Floyd murder. She cautioned them not to think she wasn't talking about any of them. She was direct, and she said she was talking to each and every one of the congresspersons. No matter how progressive, anti-racist, enlightened, or a friend of Black people they have been. Speaker Pelosi was in attendance at that meeting. But nobody stormed out of the room angry at being called a racist or defensively calling DiAngelo names for her directness, much like another politician would likely do. Indeed, without endorsing him as a candidate, I greatly admire Vice President Biden for his choice of Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, after she famously confronted him at a debate last fall about his past racist actions. He supposedly was stung by her words at the time. He reacted with white fragility. But he's clearly moved beyond that by choosing her. It shows he may have the willingness to admit that he too is implicitly, unconsciously racist. It shows he has a certain strength of character and humility to try and be a better person. Now, dear friends, I suggest that ending white fragility is about humility and self-awareness. I, of course, am a white 60-year-old father of two, gay, racist man who has enjoyed abundant white privilege. I was born into my advantages as a white male. I had no choice about that, and so I can feel no guilt, just obligation to change my inner attitudes. As a gay man who came out later in life, I know about confronting one's inner truth. I know the painful challenge of exposing oneself as a person many people may consider bad. The book White Fragility has been revolutionary to me. because it's removed some of the scales from my eyes. I can only encourage all of us to look deep within ourselves, not in fear, but an effort to be brave, true, and open. There's nothing wrong with what we will find. We did not cause our implicit racism, but we can and must cause our cure. And when we are confronted with our unconscious racist actions or speech, in direct, firm, and verbally nonviolent ways, as John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. practiced, I pray we respond with grace and a pledge to listen and learn. I want to believe that love and truth and reconciliation will win the fight against bigotry and racism. Like the blind man in the Jesus story, like so many brave folk who confront and change flaws within themselves. Let us courageously heal ourselves of white fragility and implicit racism, and be all the better for it. And I wish you each much peace and joy. Now for our discussion. Once again, I want to suggest and remind everyone that we are in a safe place. This is a safe virtual community of people. And so I hope one and all will feel free and safe to share. My first question, which I throw out for discussion and your consideration, and as Sue Klein said, if you would like to speak, please try and unmute yourself. But my first question is, how do we create in ourselves the ability or the courage to engage in difficult conversations about race? I welcome any of your comments on that, because as Michael acknowledged at the outset, talking about race is difficult for many of us, and it is due to our white fragility. But how do we summon the ability to engage in conversations about it? I welcome your thoughts.
Since I'm unmuted, anyway, I think it's really tough to understand this concept of white fragility. It's always been, the concept of white supremacy has been difficult to understand. But then when we talk about white fragility, why are we defensive? Why do we take offense if we are corrected? And I think it is it's a human nature kind of thing. If somebody offends us, we feel offended, it is human nature to react in that way. I think the tough part is putting aside that defensiveness. It all comes together with acknowledging that we are racist and that we've been born into that culture and that it doesn't make us bad people. And then to be able to put that, aside and listen. None of us, no, I shouldn't say none of us, but I'm not good at listening. And I think we all need to learn to listen and practice listening so that we can hear what our conversation partner is saying. And it's tough, but I think there are ways to do it. There are lots of programs out there. But I think just learning to listen first has to come almost before learning to listen to really hard stuff. Just
Yeah.
my thought.
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate those thoughts. How easy or difficult is it for you to accept the idea that having implicit racism does not make you a bad person? For me, that was a totally new concept for me to begin to try and assimilate into myself. And as D'Angelo says, by holding that concept in the past, that was what led to my defensiveness.
You asking me?
If you
I
want
think
to, sure, yes. How easy or difficult is it to accept that premise?
it's really tough. And having grown up in not only a culture, but in a church where you were good or bad, where there wasn't a whole lot of wiggle room for free thought and the gray areas, it's been a very difficult thing. And coming out was difficult for me because I was either good or bad. But as you take that even farther to a far more universal ism, it becomes very logical to me to say this is neither good nor bad. It is, to quote our president, it is what it is. But I think we need to, if there's any forgiveness to be given, we need to forgive ourselves for our own perhaps racist acts. I don't think we need to forgive ourselves for the culture that we've been, that we've grown up in and been educated in. We don't need to forgive ourselves. We are.
Yes.
So.
Thank you, Sue. I see Jack would like to say something.
Hi, Doug. I like the concept of along the lines of it's not something to feel guilty about, that we're like fish. We've grown up in a tank swimming in a toxic sea of racism. So you don't need to apologize for having been affected by that. And as to how we get over it, I just think you gotta buck up and take that first step and do it once, and then the next time will be easier, and the next time will be easier than that. And I'm almost done. I just want to inject one more thing, semi-related, just on inherent sexism. I love it how you keep slipping in on us referring to God as she, because it trips me up every time. It trips a wire in me, and I go, wait, I want to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because we're so inured to thinking of God as a male entity. So I like that. I'm glad you keep doing that.
Well, thank you, Jack. And it is something that I have just been able to adopt. But to me, making that comparison to what we're talking about with the book White Fragility is that we are inured in these kinds of pre-patterned thoughts that have been taught to us by culture. And it's only by, as you said, bucking it up and taking the hard step just to kind of confront those deep things within us that we can maybe get past that initial hurdle of fear, maybe.
And that you will, if you do it, you'll feel better. It's not like you're gonna flog yourself and have terrible, painful wounds to deal with. You're actually gonna be a healthier, happier individual for it.
Thank you, Jack, for your thoughts. I see, did Linda, were you raising your hand?
When I was thinking about the God as female, it's inured in us that it's a white man, and
Mm.
Jesus was a white man,
Yes.
and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yes.
So it's a lot of history to try and get out of your brain and think differently. That's all.
Yeah. No. Thank you for that
Same
comment.
with our fragility.
Yes. Thank you.
I think Diane has something to say.
Diane?
So listening to this, of course, I don't know how much it's affecting everyone else, but it's very soul concerning to me to think about these things about myself and how much I might be whateverist. And I think that this applies to more than just racism. I mean, it's the sexism, it's the everything that is white culture for me, since I was a child, which, back in the 70s. So, we are programmed that you start off with white and then you alter it based on what you see. Like, oh, that's a white person until you see color. And then you say, oh, it's a colored person. It's a white person until you see that they're dressed differently. And then you're like, oh, maybe it's not American, right? I mean, that's just things you do based on how you were trained as a child, that was basic white, and then you changed basically on what you saw. Even so much as like, my default is heterosexual, until somebody tells me differently, I assume they're heterosexual. I assume they're monogamous. I assume, many isms in my head based on my training. And every time it hits me that I have messed up based on that training, it makes me go, oh my God, why did I do that? Because Sue, thank you for sharing that you came out. I had no idea. And that was just another one. Why did I have to have her as heterosexual? Why do I have to have her as being a certain way? And that's my norm, and I hate it, but it is what my brain does, and I keep trying, and there's no negativity, overt negativity that I can track for the difference, because I was raised UU, and I accept everybody, I could care less. But I hate that my default is white, monogamous, and straight. That's not what I want to be.
Yeah.
I think that some of us have that and can feel bad about it, but also can be like, okay, that's not something you controlled, but from now on you need to.
Yes.
You need to look at that and accept yourself and see what you can do about it.
Yeah.
So that was my thought.
No, thank you, Diane. Thank you very much. Anne Bobanek, were you raising your hand?
Yes, I was. Going back to what Jack said, thank you. I always appreciate it when you call God or female or refer to her as her. But I think that when we can stop needing to be wrong or right, as in racist or not racist, I think that we can be present, to witness. So thank you for offering and everyone, I think.
Thank you, Anne. That brings just a whole nother cultural aspect into how we can approach it, and the spiritual aspect, mindfulness, being present. Yeah, thank you.
Andy's wanting to comment via the chat.
Oh yeah, hi. It just reminded me, when I was a teacher, I had a predominantly Black kids in my class, high school, and I remember it surprising me at the books we read in class. I asked them, or maybe they said, I said, how do you picture the characters? And they were obviously about, some of the books we read were obviously about white people, and they said they always saw the characters as Black, and I was like, huh, and I mean, I thought that was really insightful, but of course that was their viewpoint, and and they wrote it could be in just completely different parts of the world or times or anything, and I just thought that was very interesting.
Yes.
So, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to notice that people look different. And I think I think it's silly to think that we don't notice differences,
Right.
but I think it's how you react to those differences.
Yes. And
That's all.
D'Angelo makes that point in her book, that the idea of colorblind is just a false narrative we want to try and
Mhm.
tell ourselves. So, yeah.
Right.
Carol Wilmendorf, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, yeah. I remember just I sometimes I call it like I'm trying to deprogram myself, and you know, because you get into habits of thought, and like one of them is just white man, black guy.
Mm.
You know, there's just a slight you
Mhm.
know, demarcation, just this is a man, this is a guy. That you know, some of that's informality, but a lot of that's just what society kind of keeps propagating out. You know, if you look around at the important people, that white male thing keeps kicking up, and you know, and they're dressed well, and they're this and they're that, and then if you look at the people who are cleaning the, you know, picking up the garbage and cleaning the office building or something like that, and you've got Hispanic and you've got black and you've got, you know, and it's just like inherent worth and dignity of every human being. It's like, yeah, but that's not the messages we get every day, you know, and so we really got to keep continuously, not, you know, not passively, but actively realizing how corrupt and our society is, that, you know, there's that basic truth of humanity, and yet we see every day something different, and that's a dissonance in our understanding, and our, you know, and so that deprogramming. And I mean, you know, one of the things I remember when I lived in Maryland, I had coworkers. I worked for the federal government. I had a lot of African American coworkers, and it felt normal, and it was respected. It felt good, and you know, and then moving to different places, you know, Boston or New Jersey or Southeast Ohio, it's like very, 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 very few African Americans, and just finding my world kind of contracting and kind of having to really, it's so hard to rebalance when the world around you just kind of echoes these sort of quote unquote, they're societal truths, but they're not a demonstration of a good truth. They're just they're the broken society that we are, that people don't have ways of. I remember another story. Somebody was talking about how they were working on a diversity team, and so there was a lot more people of color in that concentration in that group, and there was a celebration at the end of the work that they did, and they brought in some African American artists, and it was a big deal, and these coworkers that they'd been working with, you know, in their sort of business formal situation, they went to this party, and they saw people dressed in ways that they never would have seen in a white gathering, and they realized just how much is suppressed and repressed and kept from blossoming, because that white supremacy kind of model and mold is out there that people are trying to not disrupt too badly, because it might mean they lose their job.
Yes, thank you. Have probably time for one or two more comments, and I see Betsy, you had your hand raised. Thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, I see the point of white privilege, and because that's a fact of our society, we as white people are all considered racist, and we shouldn't feel guilty about it. But I wonder, based on that argument, since it's also a matter of fact that it's a male-dominated society, should males all be considered sexist? Not in a guilty sense, but
Absolutely.
based on the same argument there.
Yeah, well, that gets into a different subject, so to speak, but I believe so. And
Definitely.
I really do. And you know, it's funny because I've spoken with another female member of GNH, and I've talked to her about how things that I can do and say can be implicitly sexist. And, you know, one of the things that if you notice in my message, but I have not always done this, is I referred to congresspersons. And too often I just lapse into the idea of saying congressmen. Well, hello, we're in an historic all-time high of female members of the House of Representatives. And to me, that was just an implicit, almost unconscious thing that I have done in the past that I need to, I think, I forget who said it, Diane said it, deprogram ourselves in terms of what we do and say, and as well as our thinking. But I would agree with you, Betsy. And I think that's probably the case for some other isms as well. Heterosexism, I don't know, I think can sometimes be an implicit, subconscious attitude.
Ableism. Ableism is a big one.
Ableism, another one, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Can I just say something really funny, because I got to tell just a quick tale?
Sure.
Do you mind? Okay, so speaking of that isms of congressmen versus congresspersons, my mom had been talking to my brother, he was like 11 or 12, about not saying men. And he turned and said, okay, well, I'm going to go outside and check the person box to see if the person brought any person. To avoid saying mailman or mail or whatever, just say person instead. So, you know, the fight started many generations ago at this point, and it's hard. But yeah, the person brought you your person.
Yeah, thank you for that bit of humor. Quickly review if I see any more hands up. We are running a bit short on time, but I want to make sure people have an opportunity. There are two still, I'm sorry, Sue, what are you waiting
Sue?
at?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a third chance here. One of the things that happens, and I think we are very much unaware of in this binary world that we live in, is when you're talking, say you've listened to a speaker, you've listened to Ta-Nehisi Coates, or you've listened to James Baldwin or something, and you're discussing it afterwards, and you talk about how articulate he is or she. And I have learned recently that that can often be an insult to persons of color, because so what's the opposite of articulate? Inarticulate? Do we automatically in our binary heads think of African Americans or persons of color as inarticulate, so that we have to point out that, gee, she was really an articulate speaker? And it seems to come up in diversity trainings a lot, and it's something we don't realize we're doing. And I mean, it can feel like walking on eggs, but we need to walk on eggs, and we need to learn not to break them. That's my analogy.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to close our discussion for this here online, but I encourage discussion with friends afterwards, or with your significant others who you were with following the service. And there are still 2 more Sundays of covering this book. We look forward to what Michael will have to say next Sunday, and then the week after will be entirely a discussion on basically on Robin DiAngelo's chapter, Where Do We Go From Here? Thank you, one and all. I turn it back over to you, Sue Klein, our service leader.
Okay. We've come to the time where we have an opportunity to share our wealth, no matter what our wealth is. If we have more time than money, then we need to share our time. But at this particular time is when we pass the basket. And we're not in church, we can't pass the basket right now. I'm asking you to pass your personal basket and collect some money in it for GNH. The bills still have to be paid. We have seen a certain fall off in our income, and it can relate pretty directly to the lack of a basket on Sunday. So please take this time to get onto some technology and make a donation by way of Givelify, or take this time to grab your checkbook, and while Michael is playing We Americans, and remember GNH. This is our community, and there are some things that still have to happen, including just getting the building cleaned and some things like that. So we thank you for being here, and we thank you for sharing your wealth.
All right, guys. So this song, I apologize, it's a little bit longer, and I feel bad for taking up your time, but I really love this song, and I think it illustrates white humility. And this is coming from a white songwriter who's writing about exactly this topic that we're talking about. And I think he does such a good job of illustrating the confusion and the pain that you know, we all feel. But you know, it's just such a good song, and I hope you'll listen to it and appreciate these lyrics and this music. I think it's so moving. So here it is, We Americans by the Avett Brothers.
I grew up with reverence for the red, white, and blue. Spoke of God and liberty, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Learned love of country from my own family. Some shivered and prayed, approaching the beaches of Normandy. And that flag waves high, that's how it should be. So many lives given and taken in the name of freedom. But this story's complicated and hard to read. Pages of the book obscured or torn out completely. I am a son of Uncle Sam, and I struggle to understand the good and evil, but I'm doing the best I can in a place built on stolen land with stolen people. Blood in the soil with the cotton and tobacco. Blood in the soil with the cotton and tobacco. Blood in the soil with the cotton and tobacco. A misnamed people and a kidnapped race. Laws may change, but we can't erase the scars of a nation. Of children devalued and disavowed, displaced by greed and the arrogance of manifest destiny. And it's short-sighted to say it was a long time ago. Not even 2 lifetimes have passed since the days of Lincoln. The sins of Andrew Jackson, the shame of Jim Crow, and time moves slow when the tragedies are beyond description. I am a son of Uncle Sam, and I struggle to understand the good and evil, but I'm doing the best I can in a place built on stolen land with stolen people. We are more than the sum of our parts. All these broken homes and broken hearts. God, will you keep us wherever we go? Will you forgive us for where we've been? We Americans. Blood on the table with the coffee and the sugar. Blood on the table with the coffee and the sugar. Blood on the table with the coffee and the sugar. I've been to every state and seen shore to shore the still open wounds of the Civil War. Watched blind hatred bounce back and forth. Seen vile prejudice both in the South and the North. And I Accountability is hard to impose on ghosts of ancestors haunting the halls of our conscience. But the path of grace and goodwill is still here for those who may be considered among the living. I am a son of God and man, and I may never understand the good and evil, but I dearly love this land because of, in spite of, we the people. We are more than the sum of our parts. All these broken bones and broken hearts. God, will you keep us wherever we go? Can you forgive us for where we've been? We Americans, love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory.
What a powerful, powerful song. Thank you, Michael. This is a time when we can share our joys and sorrows. It's a spiritual time for us to share what's on our hearts. It could be a joy. It could be a sorrow, something that we're dealing with. I invite anyone who has something to share and or who needs some support to please unmute yourself and speak, or put a note in the chat and we will call on you.
I'm off. Well, see, I'm unmuted. I have not been here for a while. I was sick for about a week, and then a lot of you know about my pseudo sister. That's what I call her. She is home still sick. I mean, she's had COVID for a month. She has a lot of pre-existing problems, so she's doing better. Her daughter also had COVID pneumonia. But she's doing a lot better. But it's her daughter's husband who's still on a ventilator, has been on a ventilator for 3 weeks, over 3 weeks now. He's really in bad shape. He's septic. I don't know. I talked to a nurse that I know here who works with these COVID patients and said he sounds really typical, but she's had patients on vents for as long as 4 or 5 weeks. Because usually at the 2-week mark, they usually don't survive past 2 weeks on a vent. So no news, I guess, is good news. It's been really emotionally challenging because I can't go up there and help, because I'm not going in that house because I don't need to be exposed to it. But they call and I do all their interpretation of what's going on and lab interpretations and kind of, give them advice. So I guess just continue to keep them in your thoughts. And I don't know if everybody knows, but Nick has a full-time job now. So he started working 3 weeks ago. He's real happy. Yes. Jeff Lochter helped him find a job. That was great. So
Nice.
Thanks.
Cheryl, thank you.
Awesome.
Cheryl, thank you for that difficult news about your sister and brother-in-law. That's very difficult. And
virtual hugs.
Thoughts. I want to ask everybody to keep in mind members of our congregation or In one case, a member of our staff, first of all, Paul Miles was recently in the hospital with an infection. He's back home, but Paul has, suffered and had some challenges for quite a while. So I encourage all of you to keep him in your thoughts and your prayers, and to send him a note or a call or a text or an email. Phyllis Berenson is had to start back from square one with her knee replacement. The original knee replacement broke and she had to undergo new surgery. So she's almost back at square one. She is progressing, but it's been a terribly challenging time for her. And then, of course, last but not least, but our own dear Adrian Campbell suffered a fractured hip last week and had surgery. She is in upbeat spirits, is undergoing physical therapy at home, and hopes to be able to return to work by the end of this month. But all of those folks, please keep in your thoughts and prayers.
Okay, if there are no more.
Just a second, I'm sorry, it took me a minute.
That's
John,
okay.
on mute. I have a joy. Since 1990, I've had glaucoma, and I've taken drops, and I've had laser surgery and all that kind of stuff done. And then I had, in December and January, I had cataracts removed and new lenses put in. And the new lenses are just a tad smaller than the old lenses. And so it lets the fluid move through in my eye. And so for the first time in 30 years, I have normal eye pressure, no drops. And the drops are like $200 to $400 a month. I never was able to use generics. So it's amazing. My insurance company paid more or less depending on whatever it wanted to do. So all of it is really great. And the second thing is I was to see my nephrologist. So I had all the lab tests I have to have done for kidney panels and things since my kidney stopped in 2017 and then started. And I have been over the years spilling some protein in the urine, and this one was just totally free of that. So I'm only going back once a year for the nephrologist and for the ophthalmologist. So I feel so excited.
That's awesome.
It's fantastic news. Fantastic. So I think we will proceed. We support those of you who need support, and we smile with joy for those of you who have joys to share. Thank you. Let us come together one more time. Let us sing one more step. It's hymn number 168 if you have a hymnal. And after that, we will be able to move to conclusion.
So I just want to say real quick before we sing this song, it's real easy to forget because we sing this song so often, but it has a great message, and that is that change doesn't happen immediately, especially lasting change. It's just one step at a time. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, is that you can't expect to just all of a sudden erase your racism or, your bias in like one day. It takes a lot of time and a lot of self-reflection. So just keep that in mind when you're singing this song.
Till there is peace for us.
One more song. Thank you, Michael. And now just a short closing words. This is from James Baldwin. And there are really two different quotes here, but they hang together. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Very true. And one more thing. And once you realize that you can do something, it would be difficult to live with yourself if you did not do it. So, wisdom from James Baldwin to conclude our service. Please think of all the people that are in this community, and please extend your love, your forgiveness, your caring to all of them. So please express that in some way. And then I encourage you to please hang on for a few more minutes. It has gone a little long this morning, but Doug will put us into some breakout rooms. Hang on, say hi to your members of your community, and hang in there. Have a conversation with someone that maybe you haven't seen in a long time. And of course, you're free to exit as you need to. But hang in there with us for just a few more minutes.
I'm sorry, everyone. I have to go. I have to go to the doctor to get stitches removed. Otherwise, I would stay. But
Bye, Michael.
Bye, guys.